Did I do almost everything I could for my mom? My mother went to the hospital after finding her shaking and having a seizure while in bed next to her. She was in the ICU for 13 days. She died due to a combination of COPD, heart issues, withdrawal from her meds due to her being dropped by her doctor back in the middle of September. I'm sure more, but I haven't gotten the autopsy report or even know if they did one. She passed away around 12 to 1 a.m. on the 23rd, and not even a day before I went to visit her I asked a lot of questions, and the nurses, case manager, and staff were all generally nice. There was no cause for concern. Even the nurses were talking about possible rehab, which made me hopeful despite feeling that even if she did get better, that knowing her she wouldn't even do rehab. I stayed for I'd say 4 to 5 hours on the 22nd, talked to her some, read the Bible to her before I left. I just wasn't talkative, especially for most of the visits, because I figured she needed her rest as much as possible. The ICU has a no visitors policy from 9 to 11 a.m. and 9 to 11 p.m. also. So the next day I didn't go visit her on Saturday because I was being simply lazy and overwhelmed going to the hospital almost every other day since she was in there. I didn't expect her to die so suddenly. The case manager called me around 11 p.m. at night, literally right before going to sleep, and they told me what was happening. I literally drove as fast as I could to get there, driving dangerously and selfishly, which I admit. The hospital is near me, so it wasn't far. I ran as fast as I could as soon as I got there. When I finally went to the room, there was a lot of nurses and doctors. They were trying to revive her, but eventually couldn't. It was traumatic seeing her going through that. I don't think, since I'm completely numb in shock, that I don't fully realize it yet. They even got security involved cause of how I was reacting. Now I'm dealing with all the pain and grief of losing her, while on top of everything else I have to worry about not going homeless due to various reasons regarding the whole situation. Things are just moving so fast, I just don't know anymore. I don't know what's next or if I should even try. She smoked cigarettes most of her life and caused her COPD and eventually killed her. I even kept buying her cigarettes because she would always throw a fit, sometimes pitting my siblings by guilt tripping me into submission to get cigarettes and making something out of nothing just to get cigarettes. I tried to get her to cut the amount of her smoking. There were times over the past year where I tried to force her to quit, but you know how that went. You know what's so screwed up? The last voice message I got from which was a month ago, and she wanted to know where her cigarettes were or for me to get some more. I just can't believe this, but at the same time I'm not ignorant, understanding the consequences of smoking. I don't know where I'm going with this thread, and I'm getting exhausted thinking of everything right now. I just keep thinking about all the mistakes that lead up to this, all the regrets and the what-ifs. Hell, I even tried to get her help multiple times since her last doctor/PCP dropped her back in September for missing her appointments she wanted and made back on August 28th. But her health had kept declining to the point that she was housebound and bedridden. She could get to her bathroom and our rooms, but that's about it. She couldn't go downstairs anymore because we live in a 2-story house. All of October I tried to get some type of home health options to come visit her also, but that didn't work out, and I even screwed up with one home health provider cause either of my incompetence for lack of knowledge, the fact that she wouldn't get up and get ready, refused to be seen due to her insecurities, was too confused, etc. She missed at least 2 appointments with them, and they told me that they tried to work with me, but I couldn't work with them due to how complicated it was getting. Then about a week before her birthday, which is on October 31st, I called for ambulance through the non-emergency line cause her health was getting worse, but not so bad that I thought she was going to be dead in less than a month. And we tried to get her to go, but she refused multiple times to go despite the paramedics asking her permission at least 3 to 4 times. Especially since neither of us had power of attorney, we couldn't do anything. Then from November 1st to November 10th things just gradually got even more worse. I tried to convince my sister about taking her to the hospital ourselves or call another ambulance, but I didn't want to get in trouble with the law in case she refused again, which I'm sure she would have, but who know now? My mom wouldn't budge. She kept pushing it off, even though during that time I kept asking if she wanted to go to the hospital. She finally said multiple times about wanting to go to the hospital due to how much pain she was in, but again she wouldn't budge. Then on November 11th nothing happened that indicated what would happen later that night around 8 p.m. I was asleep with her all day, which I wholeheartedly am thankful for at least. If anything, I did notice that she kept getting up to use the bathroom, pooping more than usual. I wouldn't know what would happen just hours later. While I was asleep next to her I started feeling shaking on the bed, and it was her having a seizure. I tried to pick her up but due to not knowing that she was biting her tongue and given how traumatic that was and just waking up, it was hard. While holding her in my lap, I yelled for my sister, who was in her room asleep also, and she called for an ambulance, which arrived not even 6 minutes later. The first night at the hospital was when I thought she would have died. Tried to mentally prepare myself. Her heart rate was high, trouble breathing. I know there was more on the first night, but I forgot due to all this happening. They stabilized her the day after on November 12th to 13th. The next week, despite her speech being affected by what happened, everything was going okay. Even some of the doctors and nurses told me to hopeful. Before she passed, they wanted to do an MRI of her head, but she had a metal plate on her skull which prevented the doctors from going through with that. I don't have complete information of what fully happened yet, or the autopsy report, or if they even did one. I feel bad that I want to blame the doctors and nurses when I should blame myself more, especially for giving myself and my family hope when I wish they would have just told me the truth. However harsh though, I know that they wouldn't have known, especially with how sudden it was. My mom was a nurse for over 38 to 40 years, longer than I was alive, and yet for some reason she just wouldn't listen to me. She refused help multiple times. She hated hospitals despite working at multiple ones all my life. She knew what would happen if she kept smoking, especially since she was a nurse. She knew the impact of it. She wasn't ignorant. I understand it was an addiction to her. It's like she chose cigarettes over her own kids. Hell, she just got her first grandchild this past year from my brother. She chose her path, and I tried to get her help. I feel like I should have done more, but then again I realize I did as much as I could on my own, especially since my other siblings were just too nonchalant about her declining health before she finally went to the hospital. Now I'm at a loss of words, despite wishing to talk and express all this to someone, anyone, just to simply say how I truly feel. I'm mad at her. I love her more than my own life. I lived solely for her. I tried, but it wasn't enough. Because of the stress of taking care of her before she went to the hospital, the days before she went, I got mad at her multiple times because she kept complaining about being hungry and her stomach hurting despite me giving her food almost every time she asked for it, yet she wouldn't eat it. I tried to give her Tramadol, Pepto-Bismol, and other remedies or anything I found at the store to help ease her pain. I'm just still in shock, just utterly lost, and wish if anything I could have done differently. All the what ifs ain't gonna bring her back, nor is all the crying, anger and grieving. But I can't stop. I can't stop overthinking that if I came to the hospital that day, maybe things would be different, however small of a chance, but I guess it was going to happen regardless, no matter what I did. I miss her so much. Please, for all those going through something similar to my story, then I sympathize with you. Take care if you can. Story 2. My mother wants me to sign a power of attorney for the purchase of a house, however a specific paragraph worries me. My mom wants me to sign a power of attorney that gives her the power to sign for me some contracts for the purchase of a house. This is because she's a resident and I'm a citizen. This is what she has told me, but I've also overheard that if she purchases a house in her name, she will stop getting all the low-income benefits she has, so this is also a likely reason for her desire to put the house in my name. Anyways, while reading the power of attorney, I came across a paragraph that said that the document should be considered general and shall not limit or restrict any other actions that were not mentioned in the contract. My mom's legal advisor keeps saying that the contract will only give her control over my signature for the house stuff, but I don't quite believe him, to be honest. I requested for that paragraph to be removed, but I don't want to take long to sign because I don't want my mom to start blabbing about me not trusting her, etc., so I've been asking the legal advisor without her knowledge. Is this a normal paragraph on the power of attorney? Will it really only give her power over stuff that has to do with the purchase of the house? Edit. Wow, I really didn't know all that, to be honest. This was way out of my knowledge. I thank everybody that answered. I will try to give a very polite no to her and see if I can let her know of all the bad deeds she's doing. She'll probably still have my grandmother be the main person on the house as her original plan was, but at least I won't be involved in that mess. Update. Thank you to everyone that helped. At the end of today, before going to bed, I had a long conversation about my mom's situation with my grandmother. It's currently 4:42 a.m., wasn't quite able to sleep, so decided to update. Grandma told me she understood where I was coming from, and expressed to me her desire to completely make herself responsible for any payments on the house. She told me the only reason I was also there is in case she died, due to our situation. The situation being my grandfather died a month ago. So in her words, she said the house will be mainly under her name. This is true. There are some other documents I've helped her sign that state this, and that I'm just there as backup because if she dies then the house would belong to the state. This really eased the concerns I had since you guys mentioned all the catastrophic fraud that would occur, but it woke up a new worry for my grandma. Now I felt instead of me being used, it was her. My mom is not only milking her money, but also putting her in a potentially dangerous situation. I was furious. But there was no convincing this mother that her daughter was not an innocent angel. My grandma is very understanding, but not in this cases. In the end, I stayed out of it, but the process will be ongoing under my grandma's name, and she does want to buy the house for her daughter, and she has the means to pay it, so it should be okay, but the benefits fraud aspect of it worries me. I'm just praying my poor grandma doesn't get thrown in jail for my mother's negligence.